Hello everyone, it is our honor to present today our work titled Readdressing the Past Through Traditional Courtyard Houses, From Expressions of the Past to Architectural Innovations. My name is Efstathiou and I am Associate Professor of the Department of Architecture of the University of Nicosia in Cyprus.
And my name is Maria Shehadeh and I am an expert scientist at the Cyprus University of Technology.
A critical challenge faced by modern societies is the reconciliation of modern architectural needs with a sustainable preservation of our architectural heritage. This presentation investigates how we can preserve the architectural past while building for the present. It also explores ways in which contemporary architectural production can integrate architectural heritage. The presentation explores the concept of the courtyard house, a typical Cypriot architectural model of inwards-facing residences, and illustrates particular examples of how aging residential block of flats can obtain characteristics of the valuable past by incorporating elements of our heritage in their design.
Any study on the preservation of architectural heritage or on the investigation of the integration of architectural heritage with contemporary production should first explore the cultural significance of the cases under investigation. The concept of cultural significance encapsulates the multiple values ascribed to heritage assets, including architectural heritage. By heritage values, we refer to particular attributes given to sites or objects, or particular intellectual and emotional connections that make them important and define their significance for a person, group, or community. The identification of specific values facilitates more informed decisions on the conservation and preservation of our heritage. In view of this, and before exploring indicative ways in which expressions of the past can sustainably inform architectural innovation, we should first explore the heritage values represented by traditional courtyard houses. An analysis of heritage values represented by traditional courtyard houses illustrates that these houses have a multifaceted cultural significance, which encapsulates different values that can be attached to them, namely the historic, archaeological, architectural, use, environmental, aesthetic, social, and identity value. Historic value refers to the capacity of a site to embody a relation to the past. Courtyards constitute a very important part of architectural heritage in many civilizations of the world, and especially in East Mediterranean countries. Early examples of such typologies can be seen in ancient Egypt and Minoan Crete. The existence of this typology as early as 2000 BC and its presence throughout the years until the 20th century signifies its importance in the history of architecture. The archaeological value of courtyard dwellings, that is their ability to be a source of information about the past through scientific investigation, is also extremely important. In Cyprus, examples of rooms built around courtyards can be found from the early Bronze Age to the late Bronze Age. The same architectural layout, which balances the build with the open-air part of a house, also persists in later periods, with examples being excavated in archaeological sites in Cyprus from the classical, Hellenistic and Roman periods. Architectural value relates to innovation, development and achievement regarding concepts, structural and morphological aspects, and aesthetic issues. Courtyards constitute one of the most important architectural features in vernacular architecture. Especially during the 19th and 20th century, dwellings organized around courtyards became the stereotype in both Greece and Cyprus. The designs that can be found, with differences in shape, volume and room arrangement in both rural and urban spaces, provide an added value to this typology, that is the ability to adapt to different contexts and landscapes. The courtyard house offers many innovative designs on spatial arrangements. Courtyards provide the main access to the interior spaces and become an intermediate between the public and the private, the open and the enclosed. Lower high perimeter walls, square or rectangular courtyards, L or U room arranged shapes, big or small volumes are parameters whose combination offers a variety of options. One very significant architectural element of the Cypriot courtyard house is the iliakos, a covered arched veranda or balcony in front of the courtyard facing part of the rooms. Usually on ground level, but in some cases applied on first level too, offers a higher level of climatic protection appropriate for household activities throughout the year and an intermediate space between the house and the courtyard. A functional or use value may also be attributed to these courtyards relating to the activities that were taking part in it, but also to accessibility. These courtyards often constituted the main way of circulation throughout the indoor spaces, which is confirmed by the existence of staircases in these courtyards leading to the first floors. The penetration of the building block by a small-scale central opening creates a passive thermal and cooling system, permitting the air to ventilate and cool the interior spaces and the sun to reach more sides of the rooms. Thus, these courtyards constituted a source of natural light and ventilation for the interior spaces surrounding it, also providing the necessary shade for the hot summer months. Therefore, another equally important value of these courtyards is the environmental value. Cyprus, characterized by mild winters and hot summers, provides the climatic conditions where open-air household activities are possible throughout the year. Traditional courtyards also have an undisputable aesthetic value, an element related to forms and materiality. A variety of elements can be found in such courtyards on the tiled floors and the wooden or stone structures. The forms, the textures, the light and shadow patterns add another dimension to the cultural significance of the typology. Moreover, local plants and flowers often decorate the interior open-air spaces. This contact with nature provides a psychological upheaval and a meditation means to this private world. In another design variation, a communal courtyard is often shared by two or more different houses. This was also very characteristic in Greece, and especially in poor and very densely inhabited urban areas. In these examples from the early 19th century, the internal communal courtyard played a central role not only for accessibility, which was granted through internal staircases, as shown in the figure, but also for the social interaction. Social value relates to the fulfillment of a community function that may also shape some aspects of community behavior. Residential courtyards denote a social life that distinguishes the common from the private and the personal family life from the public one. Thus, traditional courtyard houses offered a private outdoor protected space, which was also used for many social activities, such as social gatherings and festivities, celebrations and weddings. This social and cultural dimension is enhanced even more in the case of communal courtyards, shared by many neighbors, which created a communal sharing microcosm. Each of these courtyards constituted not only a point of reference for accessing a complex of houses, but also a special bond which brought together many neighbors and created a very special sense of belonging and connecting to the other. Thus, this architectural feature was at the core of creating a community identity to its inhabitants. The function of this courtyard as a landmark or a symbol of home, which enhanced the sense of belonging, adds a very special identity value to the cultural significance of these courtyards. The social and symbolic value of this typology is also evident in Greek movies of the 1950s and 60s. In many such movies, with stories developing in the microcosm of low middle-class society, the communal courtyard was the field of a variety of social interaction that brought together, or sometimes divided, the neighbors. This mode of social contact is an extremely valuable part of not only Cyprus and Greece, but also of many other Mediterranean cultures.
Despite the range of values associated with the residential typology of the courtyard house, it appears that their significance was underestimated in the second half of the 20th century. The change of the building regulations favoring detached houses on the one hand, and the influence of the modern movement favoring transparency and outwards-looking buildings on the other, led the courtyard house to be almost forgotten. The substitution of the family house by the block of flats, especially in the city centers, signifies, first of all, a change in the social issues related to the residents. The urban-centered societies in most Western cities increased the demands for the number of individual dwellings and consequently decreased the availability of usable space. The families in the second half of the 20th century have less family members and are involved in limited activities that take place at home. The value of land and the radically increased urban population can be seen as important parameter for this urban transformation. Higher, denser and compact buildings characterize the contemporary Cypriot cities. Contemporary issues that are raised internationally towards environmental care, less energy consumption, and sustainable architecture created recently a return to nature tendency in the design for the urban built environment by proposing green planted roofs, vertical gardens, vertical ecosystems, and urban farms. At the same time, a need to contradict the distant and indirect social contact gave reason to the reconsideration of the social role of design and architecture. A general trend celebrating the differentiated local identity in norms, forms, and visual or non-visual characteristics supported those facts. Additionally, the recent economic crisis in the south of Europe that led people to restore, renovate, and reuse existing buildings instead of building new ones created another parameter in the synthesis of contemporary urban dwellings. As a result, a new framework towards a more social-friendly and environmental-friendly design tendency that readdresses the past and the local identities is witnessed, especially among the participants in architecture and design education. In the case studies of the present investigation, the lessons learned from vernacular architecture influence building reuse, introducing at the same time a reconsideration of the traditional social and cultural values, aiming to improve the quality of urban social life. The aim of the project was to combine the main advantages of both housing typologies, that of the vernacular past and the international contemporary, in order to form a viable and challenging way of urban residence. A new architectural vocabulary is discussed as an outcome of a reconciliation and collaboration of the architectural heritage with the contemporary needs and production. The student projects presented here provide intangible as well as tangible means for the reinterpretation of past values. Two different existing building constructions, a conventional building block in the suburbs of Larnaca and a complex of two neighboring buildings in Nicosia, Cyprus, both built in the 1980s, were proposed to be transformed to multi-dwelling units for young families and young professionals as part of the interior design student project. The vernacular Cypriot courtyard aimed to be retreated in an innovative way in order to alternate the conventional urban apartment. Maintaining the structural frame of the buildings and most of the existing volumes, the students proposed a vertical as well as horizontal subtraction of the building volume, separating so the previously massive construction. The reinforced concrete structure, based on a regular grid system, permits the creation of openings in the horizontal concrete slabs. Besides or around the openings on each floor, planted small gardens of common or private use are introduced. They can be accessed from within the neighboring flats or from the main common circulation corridors of the building. Their use could incorporate planting, social gatherings, safe areas for children to play, household activities, direct contact between residents of all floors. The massive volumes of the former building design that were outwards direct in view and actions are substituted by a fundamentally different inwards-looking microcosm, partly private, partly public, shared between neighboring users. It balances the levels of privacy of the individual private flats with that of the public communal urban space. An alternative form of semi-private space of neighborhood occurs with direct outcomes in terms of social issues. Contact is not only visual but also social. Beyond this, inner courtyards and the disruption of the massiveness of the former inflexible structure permit nature to invade the sterile skin of the contemporary dwelling and the almost forgotten modes of social contact to overcome the limits of the social media communication and revive so one of the most valuable and tangible heritage of the Mediterranean cultures. The small-scale developments have to gain a lot from the collaboration between the new structural frame and the old typology. The accessible open spaces call and facilitate open-air activities, planting and gardening, resting and relaxing in private outdoor environment, and definitely direct social contact. Boundaries between neighboring inhabitants become less distinct, and an intruding, indiscreet liveliness creates a communal sharing microcosm. The openings created in the existing concrete slabs allow the sunlight to reach directly the inner and lower parts of the building. The orientation is taken into consideration and light studies were executed to ensure that the least possible demolished parts will reassure the maximum of direct natural light. Specific advantages of ventilation, heating and cooling were achieved. The air and the sun that are directed through the volume of the building structure, besides resulting positively in the bioclimatic behaviour, are also carrying pigments of human interaction. Smells, sounds, views are shared between the inhabitants, purposefully fragmenting a sterilized, isolated, massive habitat. A new interpretation of the architectural element of iliakos is explored on the partly enclosed interior verandas. Student proposals analyzed also the gain in energy consumption and the high levels of sustainability, as the whole design creates a microclimatic improvement by providing passive thermal and cooling solutions and major sun natural light accessibility. Especially in the hot summer months, the air circulation through the building's volumes can substitute air conditioning to a great extent by creating a wind chimney effect. Inner courtyards, disrupted volumes, penetrated outlines create advantages related to sustainability, effective use of energy, natural ventilation and lighting. In another case study, an existing abandoned warehouse building in the industrial area of Nicosia was designed to host low-income people and create a co-housing community. The existing scheme provided the grid for a free arrangement of box apartments arranged around a common internal but partly covered courtyard. The limitations of the existing reinforced concrete structure permitted only small circular openings on the concrete slabs. One of the main objectives was the creation of small residences arranged around interior common spaces. The proposal supports and enhances the communication between users and introduces a small-scale environment within a bigger shell. It considers a successful but not limiting coexistence between the old and the new, the open and the enclosed, the public and the private. The valuable environmental, social, functional properties of the communal courtyard are reinvented and creatively reintroduced. A deteriorating building structure of the 50s in a low-income residential area is proposed to be transformed to an urban oasis that will provide leveled courtyards to the neighboring block of flats. The concrete structure of the building is freed by most of its walls, and its levels of slabs will provide semi-open air spaces to the surrounding residences. Children, their parents, young professionals and elderly who live in the surrounding flats will be using and sharing it for a number of different activities. They will inevitably get to know each other, even disagree in a real and not just virtual contact. The old building becomes a shared courtyard between high buildings where the subtracted volumes of the residential former use are substituted by a valuable negative space, a natural microcosm. The redesigned system connects social groups and breaks the massive volumes of the compact residential area. Through its penetrated form, sun and air circulate much more effectively, improving the bioclimatic behaviour in favour of the neighbouring building structures. The addition of green and nature controls the amount of sun and air input and satisfies the human need to be in contact with nature. The presented case studies constitute examples of ways in which elements of our heritage can be reintroduced to existing building structures for better and easily achievable results, both in the environmental and sustainable impact of existing buildings and in the social and functional value of the urban dwelling. Inspiring contemporary architectural production can be respecting heritage without just visually imitating past forms, but by creating an inseparable bond to them through material and immaterial reconsiderations. Unchangeable, rigid formal and social substances have to adjust in the ever-changing social, technological and environmental context. Adaptive reuse has to be explored in innovative and inspiring ways, bridging the old and the new, the heritage with contemporary production, the tangible with the intangible values of a social framework.